Welcome to this episode of Sunny Silver Linings. We have a very special episode for you today, with this week's guest being Kevin Brown. Kevin is a branding and culture expert, a motivational speaker, and a best-selling author. His most recent release, Unleashing Your Hero, is available now. This interview had so much great content, we've made it into 2 parts. Enjoy part 1 with Kevin Brown. And now, your host, the founder and CEO of IT by Design, Mr. Sunny Kela. Over to you, Sunny.
Welcome to my podcast today. And today's subject is Unleashing Your Hero. And I have Kevin Brown joining me today. He's a motivational speaker, best-selling author, culture expert, and creator of the Hero Effect. And first of all, thank you, Kevin, for joining me today.
Great to be with you, Sunny. It's good to see you.
And I know you just released a new book, and we were talking about this during that conference where we met last month, that MSP conference, and you just released that book, Unleashing Your Hero, Rise Above Any Challenge, Expand Your Impact, and be the hero the world needs. So can you talk to me a little bit about the book?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, it came out in November, and we're really excited about it. And we hear a lot about heroes today. We hear a lot about what it means to be essential. And for the past decade, I've literally been around the world talking about heroes, talking about what great organizations do, what great performers do when they show up. And, you know, there's never been a time in history where I think we need more heroes at work, at home, in our communities. And this book is really about my journey. You know, I went through a dark period in my life when I was a young man from age 13 to 16, and life got complicated and it got ugly. And I ended up running away from home. I quit school in the 9th grade. I never made it to college. And if not for some heroes and some leaders and some great people who showed up in my life, I wouldn't have the pleasure of being with you today. And so the book is really about recognizing the heroes around us, but also discovering the one within us and bringing that extraordinary person to your work, to your family, to your community, and to everybody around you.
Yeah, that's great. And then I know we talked about this a little bit in the past, the journey that you traveled from the beginning, and it's amazing, you know, like the transformation that you have gone through, and there's just so much to learn from your life. And you know, leaders, professionals, every human being can learn from that journey. And so my first question before we go into the book in detail there is, what inspired you? Is that your journey that inspired you, or so? What's the idea of having a book on this topic?
Yeah, well, actually, Sunny, I think it picked me. You know, when I had a great corporate career. I spent 32 years in franchising. I was really, really lucky and blessed to be around some great leaders, some people who took me in and helped to shepherd me and mentor me. And this message, this idea of being a hero was born out of my work and really digging into culture. What makes a high performing team different from everybody else? And it really took on a life of its own. And I started to notice that sometimes our language, we don't always say the right things as professionals. We say things, for example, most people would describe heroes as ordinary people who do extraordinary things. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we really talk about in the book, and I talk about in my speeches, is that we don't think anybody's here to be ordinary. We don't think people were put here to make an ordinary contribution. In fact, I think it's just the opposite. I think everybody was created with extraordinary talents, gifts, and abilities. And I think they were put here to use those in the service of others. And so we say that heroes are extraordinary people who choose not to be ordinary. We truly believe that ordinary is a choice. It's a learned behavior. And so that alone inspires me to go out, because I want you to know you're extraordinary. I want everybody around you to know that they're extraordinary. And so that's really our mission, is to use our story to inspire and move people to chase their dreams and become the best version of themselves.
So coming back to your journey, and what can we learn from this book as leaders, where their responsibility is to create that culture which is conducive to people's overall growth and where we can be the hero for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, culture is my favorite subject to talk about, and it's something that every organization talks about, but honestly, very few organizations do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a friend of mine who says you have a culture by design or by default.
Yeah.
And it's always our choice, especially as leaders. We have a choice about the environment that we want to create.
Yeah.
And whether you're an employee, whether you're a leader, whether you're an owner of an organization, it's everybody's responsibility. Because one thing I know, and I know championship athletes, I know great business people, I know great leaders and mentors, great performers want to be around other great performers. And when we allow less than excellence into our organization, our A players, the ones who are knocking it out of the park every day, they begin to question us as leaders. Mm-hmm. They wonder, why would you let weeds grow in this garden? And so as leaders, when we think about a culture of heroes, I want to put that into context. I'm not talking about, everybody running around thinking they're the smartest person in the room, or I'm here to save the day. Mm-hmm. The heroes that we talk about, the heroes that we identify, are people who are not here to save the day, they're here to serve today. Mm-hmm. And they show up with that serving mindset, not only to their customers and their clients, but to each other. Mm-hmm. And it's you can look to your left or your right, up and down the organization, and say, I know they have my back and I have theirs. And it begins there. It begins with this mindset of solving problems, mm-hmm. making life better, mm-hmm. making it easier for our customers to do their work, removing the obstacles that keep people from being their best. Mm-hmm. And so culture is everybody's job, and it's something that attracts A players. It attracts great leaders. It attracts great clients. There's good clients and there's bad clients. There's high maintenance and there's great partners. And one thing I know, when you have a healthy and vibrant culture, it attracts more of everything that you want.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you. So I was reading your book, Kevin, and I think this is a nice segue to talk about when you, in your book, you talk about be your best, do your best, and serve others well. Can you elaborate on that concept and talk to us a little bit more about why you think that is so critical and so important? And you kind of, in the beginning of the book, you talk about this.
Yeah, and you touched on this a minute ago. You were talking about that one conversation that you had that absolutely transformed your life. It validated the direction, it validated that it was possible, and it helped you chart this course that has become your life. Mm-hmm. And probably you have dreams now that you wouldn't have even dared to dream back then.
Yeah.
And I think coming back to this idea of being your best when it matters the most, it doesn't take a lot to separate yourself from the competition. Mm-hmm. It just takes a willingness to be your best and to be present. To be present in this moment is so incredibly difficult with the demands on our time, technology constantly letting us know that there's more work to do. All of the things that distract us from this present moment, the great ones, the ones that I like to be around, the people who I want on my team, they have mastered this ability to be present in this moment. Mm-hmm. You've got a million other things you could be doing right now. I have a million other things I could be doing right now. But right before we went live, we both turned off all of our devices. We turned off all the sounds to the best of our ability, and we're present in this moment. And we talk about it, and I'm afraid that it becomes so cliche that we dismiss it. I think we have to come back to this centerpiece that says to be your best, to do your best, to serve others, and to truly solve problems. I mean, the greatest gift, Sonny, we can give somebody is our full attention and our time and the ability. Think if that person had never had that conversation with you because they were too busy. They had other things that they were doing. Where would you be? Where would I be? I had a mentor in my life. I literally lived in a car. I used to sleep in hospital waiting rooms and use public restrooms to get ready. And if not for one man, if not for one person who took me under his wing and taught me how to be a salesperson, taught me how to be a leader, taught me how to be a good human, I wouldn't even be here today. And so the power of this one moment, it starts right there. And it's about being intentional. I hear people all the time say, random acts of kindness. Kindness should never be random. It should always, it should always be intentional, and so should showing up in these moments.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, so you'd also talk about the gifts and, that we neglect our gifts and accept our whatever happens to us, right? And I'm going to go there with your turning point. So when you were sleeping in the cars, you had nowhere to go, you don't know what to do, and you want, it's like almost like there was that was rock bottom for you. And then something happened, and that was a turning point. So can you walk us through that moment or that turning point where transformation journey started for you, that change started for you, and what triggered that change?
Yeah, I was introduced to a concept as a young man called inspirational discontentment. And I didn't really fully understand what that meant until I became much older. But looking back on my life, you said it, I hit rock bottom. I was angry. I was depressed. I was scared. Everybody had given up on me, and rightfully so, because I had given up on me too. Mm-hmm. And some things happened to me when I was 13, 14, 15, 16 years old that were very traumatic. And that's what began that downward spiral. But the problem, Sonny, is I was running through life, dragging that 13-year-old version of myself everywhere I went. And I used him as an excuse for not doing well. Mm-hmm. I used him as a reason for not improving my life, because I could just point to what happened and say, because that happened to me, my life's a mess. My life doesn't work. People don't care about me. Nobody loves me. And as I sat in that car, to be very candid with you, on more than one night, I thought about taking my own life, but I was too chicken to do it. I couldn't pull the trigger. And I literally used to pray that somebody would come along in the darkness and do it for me. And luckily that prayer went unanswered. And I met this gentleman who helped pull my life out of the ditch. But if I hadn't reached rock bottom and become so angry with where I was in my life, I would have never changed. So sometimes in life, we have to get so discontent with where we are, so discontent and frustrated with our results, that we're willing to make the change, because the pain of staying where we are is so great that we want to run towards something more positive. And so I decided to start running toward the pleasure, to start running towards something positive, to focus on what I could do well and use those gifts to kind of get my life back on track.
Yeah, I think that's a big problem nowadays, that self-love, that, self-doubt, and then overall that, voice in your head, especially during these 2 years of pandemic, and people are going through a lot of challenges where they have never faced those challenges before. So it kind of got accelerated in the last 2 years or so. And it's a real problem, and it's a major problem. And so I want to go a little bit deeper into now that moment when you had that state of mind, and now someone showed up, and I want to talk about that a little bit, that how that connection happened and what this person did to you, that you started changing and you started kind of loving yourself, and that positive direction that you started following.
Yeah, so I knew that if I was going to stay around, I knew if I was going to survive, that I had to change. I had reached that point that said, look, everything I've tried in my life, tried to do it on my own, hanging around the wrong people, developing bad habits, that wasn't working. So if I was going to stay, I needed to change. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I needed to do was figure out how to make money. I was a 9th grade dropout. I didn't know what to do. And so I literally answered a newspaper ad for a salesperson. That's how we did it back in the olden days, is we had newspapers, and I called this phone number, and on the other end of the line was a man named David. And he was a crusty old sales guy from South Texas. And I told him my whole story. I told him all about that 13-year-old kid. I told him what happened to me, and he was still willing to give me a chance. And he said something that I'll never, ever forget. He said, if you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to follow a system, if you're willing to do what I ask you to do, I can take you someplace that you've never even dreamed of. I can teach you a skill that will serve you for the rest of your life. And he told me something. He said, if you feed your mind, you'll never go hungry again. And this gentleman started to pour into my mind. He gave me books to read, like Think and Grow Rich and As a Man Thinketh, and the greatest salesperson or the greatest salesman in the world, Og Mandino. And he started to feed my mind with better things than I had been feeding it with before. And he just worked on me a little bit every day. And he taught me how to sell. He taught me how to believe in myself. And here's what he did, Sonny. And I think every great leader does this. He took the storyline that life had given a 13-year-old kid and he started to rewrite it. So many people get up every single day of their life and they take the storyline that life gives them and they accept it as their own truth. Whether it's the pandemic, a doctor's diagnosis, somebody else's opinion, they take that and they believe that it's true for them and they get up and they walk it out every single day. And they forget that they have the pen in their hand. And this old man showed me that I had the pen in my hand and he helped me craft a new vision for my life. And then he pushed me toward that vision every single day, even on days when I would fight him, even on days when I couldn't get it right. He believed in me and he was willing to go to work because he had somebody who had done that for him. So this was his way of paying it forward and helping a struggling street kid like me get his life together.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Like, so that individual who interviewed you and gave you that pen. So we all, especially if you are in a leadership position, you are in leading people, and you have that power to change people's lives, right? And where you have the power to go beyond just that job interview and really making a positive impact on someone's life.
Thanks for watching part 1 of Sonny's Talk with Kevin Brown. Join us next week for part 2.